It's a real pleasure to welcome to BBC Radio Scotland David Gilmour. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Very good.
We're here to talk about, David, your brand new album, Rattle That Lock, which is your first studio album in almost a decade. How were the foundation stones musically laid for the record?
Ever since the last record, and even before, in fact, I have collections of pieces of music that gradually sort of evolve until they become the ones that I want to work on. And so for the last, say, couple of years, 18 months, 2 years, I've been working quite hard putting this album together with both pieces of music that I've written very recently and some that are slightly older. One or two that predate the On an Island album that came out in 2006 even.
So, I mean, are you like a squirrel? As you go along, are you sort of storing up pieces of music and thinking that'll come in handy at some point, I'll keep a hold of that?
Yes, I hoard these pieces of music, and if they seem like they've got a little bit of magic to them, I keep at it with them. But sometimes they sort of are very reluctant to reveal themselves in their entirety to me. There's a couple on this one that I just, been not exactly struggling with on a day-to-day basis, but I've been trying to find the key for, you could say, for quite a while, and that have finally revealed themselves. And it's a very strange thing, the way some pieces of music keep you hanging on for a while.
There must be such a weight of expectation when the day of dawning comes and you finally go into the studio for the first time and press the play and record button and start recording. Do you have to kind of just ignore all the history and ignore all the baggage that comes with David Gilmour and just kind of start with a clean slate almost?
That's what I try to do. I mean, I don't think it's my job to listen to what people want or say. I don't really want to, consider what other people think is their favourite album of my and our oeuvres. I just want to get on with what I do at this moment in time and do that as well as I possibly can. And when you've finished and you've done the final mixes and you've put them all in the right order and you've got it all as good as you think you can possibly get it, that's when you start thinking, oh God, does it match up? Is it going to be better than anything? Luckily, I haven't had much of that with this one, because I think this album is really, to me, is one of the best things I've ever done.
One of your long-time musical collaborators on the album is the great Phil Manzanera of Roxy Music, who co-produces the album and also plays guitar and plays guitar in your touring band. How musically did your paths cross? Because Roxy Music, in the same way as Pink Floyd, were guys who really pushed the envelope musically. So how did you cross paths with Phil Manzanera? When did you start working together?
We started working together, really, on the Momentary Lapse of Reason album, where we co-wrote a song for that, in fact, called Momentary Lapse of Reason. But we'd met, funnily enough, before Phil was in Roxy Music, and I knew his brother in Cambridge, and his brother told me that his kid brother wanted to get into the music business, and would I go out to lunch with him and his brother and give him the benefit of my experience and advice. So we did, and that was in about 1970.
And I mean, were you a Roxy Music fan? Because like Pink Floyd...
This was before Roxy Music.
But with each and every album, as you saw them evolve, like Pink Floyd, I guess, Roxy Music, never made the same album twice. They always, kind of push the musical boundaries with every record. So were you looking on thinking, the boy did good?
Yeah. Obviously, I told him the right things.
Another song on the album is A Boat Lies Waiting, which was written with an affectionate nod to the late, great Rick Wright, who died in 2009. That must have been a real labour of love for you, because I think there's a sample of Rick on the song, isn't there?
There's a sample of Rick on that song. Again, this is a piece of music that Polly wrote those words brilliantly, and there's a sort of a flow to the music that made Polly think of waves in the sea, and waves in the sea made her think of Rick, because Rick, not to everyone else in the world, but to us, we always think of Rick as being on a boat, because he loved sailing and would sail across the Atlantic and back, and spent half his life on boats. Music and boats were big loves of his life, and Polly has sort of encapsulated something about him and that love of the sea in that song.
You must really miss him, because you've said on several occasions in the past that of all the musicians you have worked with over the years, he was by far one of the most accomplished.
He had a particular thing, you could call it soul or emotional depth, with which I had, over all those years, developed a kind of, you could say, telepathic connection, so that we kind of knew what each of us was going to be doing next, where we were going to go. In some of the jam sort of sessions that became the last Pink Floyd record, The Endless River, you can hear it's me and Rick just playing together in a room. He's playing a keyboard thing and I'm playing a guitar, and I will play a note and he will be changing to that chord that suits that note at precisely the same moment, in a way that you can only sort of really describe as telepathic. Both his depth of feeling in music, his emotional tie to the music, and that telepathic thing are very hard to come by, and very hard to come by quickly. It can take you years to get to that sort of point where that thing works.
Now, it also must be very nice to be in a position to pick up the phone and call David Crosby and Graham Nash and say, I'm making another record, can you come in and sing some vocals? That must be a fantastic experience for you, working with guys like that.
It's fantastic. It's a thrill. I mean, I've known Graham when he was in the Hollies, and they would be recording at Abbey Road Studios, as would we, in one of the three big rooms there. So I've always known Graham, and he introduced me to David at some point. Again, that memory is lost in the mists of time. And for the On an Island album back in 2006, I thought I would ask them if they would come and sing a bit for me, which they did very gracefully and beautifully, and worked once.
And when you work with guys like that, does inevitably the fan come out in David Gilmour? I mean, they are such incredible musicians with such a great history like yourself.
It's fantastic. It's such a privilege and a joy to work with guys like that, who just instinctively know how to do harmony, how to make it blend, how to sit in with it, and how to make the words, how to strengthen the meaning of the words that you're trying to sing.
Now, the album is a real family affair, because a couple of your kids play on some of the songs, and the lyrics were also co-written on 5 of the tracks by your wife, Polly Sampson, who's an acclaimed author in her own right. How did that arrangement begin, David? Because, did you just automatically think if she's good at writing books, she'll be great at writing lyrics?
I sort of slightly, subtly strong-armed her into helping me as I was struggling to get to grips with the lyrics for the Division Bell album back as we were recording it in '93. Yeah, she was slightly unwilling at first, and then was unwilling to have her name on it. But I told her she needed to put her name on it, that she'd regret it if she didn't. And we've been working on these things together ever since. I do like to be part of a team, and she is my partner in so many more ways than one.
It's almost like a reverse of the Elton John, Bernie Taupin situation, where you give her a piece of music and say, this is what I'm thinking about. Do you give her a theme? Do you give her a topic? Or does she come up with that independently?
No, she tends to come up with that entirely independently. She says to me that she sort of divines it from what's in the music, and she's trying to just dig away until whatever it is that's in the music is uncovered, and then she writes it.
In terms of subject matter, does she always hit the target?
Yes.
Or are there times when you say what you're writing about there, or do you expect me to sing such and such a line?
She has an extraordinary capacity for hitting the nail very much on the head of what exactly I'm trying to release, I suppose you could say. When I'm doing these pieces of music, I cannot articulate what the song is about, and she spots it straight away and knows what it should be.
Now, you've always been a very private man, but inevitably, there are some parts of the album which are very autobiographical, and the brand new single Faces of Stone, track number 3, is a song which was inspired by a time period between the death of your late mother and the birth of your daughter. Why did you decide after all this time to write about that?
These things aren't really decisions. These things just that, in a quiet, relaxed, you could say subconscious moment, something just pops out and you think, where did that come from and what's it about? And this little thing about these Faces of Stone popped out and informed me that it was about my mother, about a specific day when my mother was nearing the end of her life, and we were walking in a little park in London, and it was very shortly after the birth of my youngest child, Romany. And it's really just a description of what happened that day. My mother was sort of going into dementia, and she had hallucinations of pictures hanging in trees in this park. And I thought this was a very odd thing.
Because you said in the recent Alan Yentob BBC documentary that you didn't seem to have a particularly close relationship with your mother. What do you think she would have made if she'd still been around to hear the finished song?
Oh, she'd have been thrilled. She'd have been thrilled to know that a song was about her in any way whatsoever. She was a big fan. I mean, it's true that we had our differences, but she was a big fan. She wanted to come to every concert that I ever did, and rather too many for my taste at times. But,
so she was the proud mum?
She was very proud, yes.
And David, you joined Pink Floyd at the tender age of 21. They were already a kind of established act, I guess, at that time. Realistically, what were your expectations? What did you think you were joining, and what did you think you were going to do in this band?
Well, what they did under Sid's leadership and was fantastic. Sid's songs were terrific. Them live was a very, very different proposition. Long, extended jamming of an unusual sort. I didn't think that it could stay remotely the same without Sid, and it proved so to be. I had really no idea of how far we could take it, or whether I was just going to be joining in on something for a while. But we quite quickly after Sid's departure, we found that we had a common interest and a new direction that we could work on, and here we still are, more or less.
What was London like back in those crazy days? It would have been around about 1969, 1970. There was the UFO Club and all this kind of underground movement. Was it an exciting place to be creative and to be making music in?
Fantastically much so, yes.
Would you literally walk into a club and there'd be Jimi Hendrix and John Lennon and Brian Jones and that kind of thing?
That would be very common. There were clubs, where you could rely on people turning up and doing stuff. The Speakeasy, which was the sort of musicians' club of the day, would have Hendrix jamming, Clapton jamming, all the time. A club called Blazes in South Kensington, where I saw Jimi Hendrix first time in 1966. It was a pretty exciting time. The first time seeing Hendrix jamming with the Brian Auger Trinity with Julie Driscoll in '66 was one of those high defined moments, snapshots of history that you can say I was there. It was just amazing.
I love that great story. I think he was in the Speakeasy or the Bag of Nails or something, and Eric Clapton saw him play guitar and turned to his mate and said, "What are we going to do now?"
Yeah.
So, was there a lot of competition then? Did that automatically raise the bar?
It always seemed to me that there was a sort of a friendly competition. I don't think anyone was... obviously there are moments when you see someone new. Well, there obviously aren't very many moments, but there's the occasional moment like that first Hendrix moment. I can entirely understand Eric Clapton thinking, Jesus, what have I got to do now? And I felt the same, but you get over that very quickly, and you think it actually then inspires you. A couple of days later, you're thinking, actually, that's going to give me a good kick up the backside, and we'll move on.
And then the Beatles story, of course, when Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band came out the following night, they went to see him at the Savile Theatre, and he opened the show with the title track.
Yeah, did he? Didn't know that. Excellent.
I mean, the band, obviously, when you joined Pink Floyd, the band became very different, with the departure of the late, great Syd Barrett. When you were making records in 1973 and 1975, like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, did you have any earthly clue that not only were you making a record, that you were actually making rock history and blazing a trail like no other?
It's I don't want to rewrite history, so I suppose I'll have to tell the truth. I had a bet with someone that Dark Side of the Moon wouldn't get to top 10 in America or something like that. I can't quite remember what the bet exactly was, but it worked in my favour because I lost the bet but won the big bet, you could say. When we were making Dark Side of the Moon, it was very obvious that we were making a leap forward, and that we were going somewhere a bit deeper, a bit better than what we had previously done. It was a step up, quite obviously. You cannot quite... we didn't sit and think, God, we're going to go to number one. This is going to turn us into megastars or any of that stuff. No, you never think that. But we were convinced that it was going to be a really good album, and when Storm and Poe came in with a bunch of covers, and one of them just went, "Oh, take me, it's me, I'm the one you want," and we thought, God, this is really going to lift us a little bit.
You lost the bet in a big way. You didn't think it would be a top 10 record. It's now one of the 10 biggest selling albums in rock history. Two of the key tracks on it, Breathe and Time, were David Gilmour compositions. With the benefit of hindsight, I mean, when you look back at that now, it must be something that you're incredibly proud of, because if you were to go to anybody who has a halfway decent record collection, whether it's vinyl or whether it's CD, if you look through, there's going to be a copy of Dark Side of the Moon on the shelf somewhere.
It's been that way for such a long time. I would get a little blasé about it, but it's still a wonderful thing. Yeah.
When you were 10 years of age, you said that you heard Rock Around the Clock, and you heard by Bill Haley and the Comets, and you heard Elvis Presley singing Heartbreak Hotel, and it was a kind of game changer for you. Yeah. It was a kind of life-changing moment. You picked up the guitar and never put it back down again. What's it like, David, to know that that self-same thing has happened to people who've maybe heard one of your songs, Comfortably Numb, and been inspired to pick up a guitar and write songs and think, well, if he can do it, maybe I can do it? That must be incredibly gratifying.
It's incredibly gratifying, absolutely. I mean, those first moments of being so turned on by these sort of epiphanic moments, it's just such a thrill, and it's impossible to quite judge what that moment can have been like for other people listening to anything by Pink Floyd. I accept, it must have happened, but I can't quite imagine it.
I was lucky enough to be in the audience at Hyde Park in London on the 2nd of July 2005 at Live 8, when Pink Floyd got back together again for the first time in 25 years. And you stated that you wanted to perform, but you wanted to leave the trash behind. Do you have fond memories now of that momentous occasion?
I have, I have great memories of that occasion. It was a wonderful moment, those sort of however long it was, 25 odd minutes on stage. It's sometimes unclear, or has become unclear by the foolishness of things that myself and other people, Roger included, have said about it in our gripier moments. But, we've had a long time, a long career, and 95% of it was joy and satisfaction and good companionship between the four of us. And it's, in our foolishness, we have allowed the darker moments which are as I say, and I'll repeat, are very few, to colour the overall history rather more than I would have preferred. But
I mean,
we all get older and wiser.
I was standing in the audience, and it was absolutely magical. So when you were standing on stage halfway through this very brief 25-minute set of 4 or 5 songs or whatever it was it as joyous for you as it was for us?
Yeah, it absolutely was. It felt very natural, very comfortable, and very inspiring to be sitting there with those guys and doing it again, But, we'd been in a rehearsal room for a few days before that, and there'd been some distinctly uncomfortable moments during that time. But, we were all pulling towards the same moment, and that moment came off as well as we could have hoped for.
Because inevitably, with I guess the Led Zeppelin reformation in 2007 as well, it led to all sorts of we'll give you 150 million if you tour, and will you ever do it again, that kind of thing. But in 2014 we got the Endless River, which was not only Floyd's 15th studio album, but it seemed to be the final studio recording. Is that now a kind of chapter of the book that for you is firmly closed?
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, it would be difficult to work again with Roger. We've just moved apart. We've been drifting in different directions for so long, and to do something again without Rick would be, just wouldn't feel right to me. So it's not a place I want to go back to.
There are so many high points over the incredible career that you've had. You've lived all of your adult life making music and being in the public eye. I guess that in 1996 being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame must have been a big deal for you. Everybody says, we just went there and we had a good night, we had a few drinks, we went home again. But it must be great to stand up in front of your peers and for them to say, come and join us.
Yeah. It was fantastic.
Who inducted you?
Billy Corgan was the guy who was doing it from Smashing Pumpkins, and we did a version of "Wish You Were Here" with him.
Yeah,
it was a thrill to be sort of to have your peers sort of give you that honour.
And I mean, when you come face to face with, the great and the good from the world of rock and roll, and they come up and say that they're Pink Floyd or David Gilmour fans and they like what you do, does inevitably the fan come out in David Gilmour? I mean, if you're standing there and there's a Bob Dylan or a Pete Townsend or a Elton John or a David Bowie, do you get a bit starstruck? It must happen, surely.
Definitely. At the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I met Pete Seeger.
And you had learned to play guitar reading his books,
his book and record, yes. And he was with Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie's son, and I spent some time chatting with them. That was a big thrill for me.
Rolling Stone magazine ranked you as the 14th greatest guitarist of all time.
Yeah.
In any quiet moment, did you look and see who was at number 12 and who was at number 13?
These I can't get into all this. Who's the best? I mean, I do obviously look through these things occasionally, and I in fact just the other day I looked through a top 100 guitar players of Rolling Stone, I think it was, and it's just ludicrous. it is ludicrous to put someone here and someone there. It's these are all those guys in that top 100 and loads more outside are all the best guys in the world at doing what they do. No one can be more Mark Knopfler than Mark Knopfler, and no one can be more Hendrix than Hendrix. Etc. John Fay, rather specialist tastes here. Joni Mitchell. These people all have their own characteristics. I can't be dealing with all this. Who's the best and who's the worst? I mean,
well, at least you're on the list.
It's nice. Yeah.
Over the years and over the course of your career, you have worked with so many different and very varied musicians, and one of them took to the stage last year at Hammersmith Odeon and played 22 nights on the Before the Dawn tour. Kate Bush. Did you get to see the show?
I did. 4 times I went to the show. Yes, it was terrific.
Wasn't it mind-blowing?
It was absolutely mind-blowing. It was a wonderful, wonderful show. I wish you'd get out and do it a little bit more.
Did that bring back memories for you when a 16-year-old Kate Bush sent her demo tape to you and said, what do you think? Do you think there's anything here? What do you remember about what must have been a great moment?
Kate's tape was brought to me by a friend of mine called Ricky Hopper, who's now deceased, and he said, "I've got this tape by a friend of mine's little sister, and would I listen to it?" And I listened to it, and I thought she had some, definite qualities, but I didn't think that it would be easy for your average record company A&R man to spot the quality that was in there.
And what was on it? Any of the songs that were recognisable from the kick inside?
From the very first one, I don't know what after I'd spent a bit of time getting used to her stuff and the way she was, and had decided to produce a full quality master recording as a demo to try and get her a record deal. I sat with her and went through 40 or 50 songs of hers, and The Man with the Child in His Eyes was one of those ones that was just her playing a piano, and that was the one that really leapt out and said, that is the one that is just a thing of great beauty. And that was one of the three that we recorded. One was the saxophone song, and I can't remember what the other one was right now. But The Man with the Child in His Eyes, and its fruition with Andrew Powell producing and arranging the strings, which is the recording that's on the record. It is a thing of beauty, but she's gone from strength to strength.
I'm a huge fan. I play Kate Bush on the programme frequently, and I always say each and every time, I'm not quite sure how you categorise what Kate Bush does, but you can bet your bottom dollar she's the only person that's doing it. What was so great about the Before the Dawn show? Because she seemed to be loving it so much that it made it all the more mystifying to think why she hasn't done it for 35 years.
Yes, I mean, she always said that, she was too nervous to do touring before, and she had a bad experience with a thing on the first tour when a guy got killed. Yeah. So I know, I've got no idea, but she must have really enjoyed it. I mean, her attention to detail, she's a very strong woman. She knows exactly what she wants and how she's going to go about getting it. And she put that whole show together absolutely brilliantly. And there were a lot of dates, but it's one building in one town, and it's definitely a bit of a shame that it hasn't been taken more further afield. Would
you like to work with her? Would you like to record with her? Maybe write a song with her?
To be honest, it's not something I've really thought about. What we do is kind of I have played on a couple of her tracks before, but it's not something I've really thought about. But maybe one of these days we'll get to that.
Well, maybe
she came to my shows at the Albert Hall recently.
Maybe you can persuade her. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, David, is to persuade Kate Bush not to leave it another 35 years. You're having incredible success with Rattle That Lock. You go on the road very soon. I was trying to think, what has David Gilmour not done over the length and breadth of his incredible career? Are there any kind of unfulfilled goals or targets that you still have to aim at?
Better, always.
Always better.
Get better. Do the next thing better. Don't cut any corners. Do everything. The show that you're doing, the album that you're making, do it as well as you can possibly do it. Don't give a shit for anyone else's opinions. Unless they strike a chord with you, and just do the best you can.
David Gilmour, continued success, and thank you very much indeed for joining us in the programme.
Thank you.